Let's talk about 3 more prospect promotions up next on Fantasy Baseball Today in 5. Welcome into FBT in 5 on Monday, August 21st. I am Frank Samfeld, joined by Scott White. And we saw last week on Friday, the Cardinals promoted their shortstop prospect Masyn Winn. Over the weekend, the Reds promoted Noelvi Marte, who was part of that massive return in the Luis Castillo trade last year. Marte is 21 years old, and this year in the minors, he was batting .279 with 11 home runs, 18 steals, and an .812 OPS. He is 28% rostered. Scott, your thoughts on Marte, and who would you rather have between him and Masyn Winn?
Definitely would rather have Masyn Winn. I think Masyn Winn is the most exciting prospect we saw called up from the weekend. Noelvi Marte, he's a legit prospect. I was surprised to see him call up because he was only 21 years old. He's hardly spent any time at AAA. And the month of August hasn't gone particularly well there for him. He's also kind of an interesting prospect in that while Noelvi Marte has been a name known in prospect circles since the time he was 17, 18, there's always been a lot of hand-wringing over whether he'd live up to his potential. You know, he'd get off to slow starts and then he'd get hot and would end up with decent numbers. His numbers this year between double and AAA, again, only 21 years old. Noelvi Marte's hit .279 with 11 homers, 18 steals, and .812 OPS. Pretty good, but not amazing, like, we got to get this guy to the majors as soon as possible. I think part of what contributed to it, the call up for Marte, is that Jonathan India and Jake Fraley, still not clear when they're coming back. But even with them out, to get Marte in the lineup, it means Elly De La Cruz every day at shortstop, Matt McLain every day at second base, Spencer Steer, a natural infielder, every day in left field. Is that really the arrangement they're going to go with to get Marte in the lineup? And again, is he going to produce? Is he ready to produce like a major leaguer at age 21? I have my doubts. So I'm not saying you can't take a flyer on the upside there with Marte. Obviously, good park, good environment, all of that. Maybe he'll surprise me. But I think in leagues that are 300 players rostered or fewer, I have a hard time finding somebody to drop for him.
Next up, we have the Giants, who are expected to promote their top pitching prospect, Kyle Harrison, on Tuesday. Kyle Harrison is 22 years old. He's a lefty. This season has not gone well for Kyle Harrison. He does pitch in the PCL, so it's a very hitter-friendly environment where he had a 4.52 ERA, a 1.48 whip, lots of strikeouts, but also lots of walks, 6.6 walks per 9 this year for Kyle Harrison. He's 23% rostered. Scott, do you have any interest in adding Kyle Harrison of the Giants?
I mean, there is tons of upside with those strikeouts, and there have been times when we've seen bad control pitchers come to the majors and suddenly they're not walking quite as many. That particular walk rate you gave us seems untenable, and he only threw 59% of his pitches for strikes in the minors this year, did Kyle Harrison. I will point out, it's a tiny sample size, obviously, but with player development, sometimes tiny samples are all you get, and maybe the Giants noticed something with this, and that's why they called him up. Last 2 starts for Kyle Harrison in the minors, 0 walks, 73% of his pitches for strikes. It was only over 7 in the third inning, so again, doesn't mean anything. I'd guess not, but the Giants obviously decided to call him up. He's only once gone even 5 innings in a start this year, right? So I imagine he'll get the same treatment of so many other Giants pitchers where it's more like a long reliever, like a bulk reliever following an opener. And that'll limit Harrison's fantasy appeal as well. I see it more as it's exciting he got called up because of what it means for his future, rather than it's exciting he got called up because he can help my fantasy team.
All right, let's wrap up with this final prospect here. The Angels promoted first base prospect Nolan Schanuel, and they continue to outdo themselves because this gentleman, Nolan Schanuel, he was just drafted in the first round of this year's draft. He is 21 years old. He was selected 11th overall. He was batting .339 with 1 homer and a .955 OPS in 16 games at AA. Obviously, Scott, I mean, it seems like they're pushing him pretty aggressively here. Do you have any interest in Nolan Schanuel for fantasy purposes?
I don't know. I mean, maybe in deeper points leagues. One thing he does very well is get on base. He draws a lot of walks. His final year in college at FAU, he had 71 walks versus 14 strikeouts. And, the plate discipline was good his entire career in his minors. He got new contacts that last year to deal with an astigmatism, and it led to just incredible plate discipline. Just his time in the minors this year, 21 games, he had 21 walks versus 10 strikeouts. We've seen Nolan Schanuel called up. He's batted leadoff for the Angels every day since coming up. We'll see if he actually starts against lefties since he's a left-handed batter. I think the issue for fantasy purposes is there any power there? Because he had only one home run in those 21 games in the minors. The exit velocity readings were not great. You kind of need power from a first baseman no matter how much he walks. But I like that he's getting playing time for the Angels and they're batting him leadoff. So I have some hope for Schanuel. I just don't know if it's going to be for categories leagues, if he's going to be the right fit.
All right, for more extensive fantasy baseball coverage, listen to the Fantasy Baseball Today podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the Audacy app, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Thanks for listening to Fantasy Baseball Today in 5, and we'll be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.